Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Zoe Zandora in for Jay and Janelle. We start tonight in national news. The Trump administration is doubling down on its policy of separating families at the border. The issue has drawn outrage from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. A new CBS News poll on Tuesday night finds 67% of Americans find the practice unacceptable. Angelica Alvarez has the latest from the White House.
DHS is no longer ignoring the law.
Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen appeared at the White House press briefing Monday, strongly defending the Trump administration's policy of separating migrant children from their parents before charging the adult with a crime.
The children are not being used as a pawn. We are trying to protect the children, which is why I'm asking Congress to act.
This video, released by the U.S. Border Patrol, shows men, women, and children kept in cages inside detention centers after illegally entering the country.
The United States will not be a migrant camp, and it will not be a refugee holding facility.
Over the last 5 weeks, more than 2,300 children have been taken from their parents.
They are violating the law and they need to be prosecuted for that. We simply cannot condone that kind of activity.
President Trump has repeatedly blamed Democrats for his administration's separation policy, calling on them to change the laws. House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi is among a group of House Democrats who toured a detention facility near San Diego.
This is not an immigration issue. This is a humanitarian issue. It's about the children.
Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz says he plans to introduce legislation this week to keep kids and their families together.
All of us who are seeing these images of children being pulled away from moms and dads in tears, we're horrified. This has to stop.
Mr. Trump is expected to huddle with House Republicans Tuesday to discuss immigration strategy. Angelica Alvarez, CBS News, the White House.
Angelica says the House is expected to take up 2 immigration bills as early as this week, both expected to address the issue of families being separated. And turning our attention to weather. Since we last spoke, Bob, there's been some major rain that's still coming down. Will it ever let up?
That's right, another cloudburst. That's the $64,000 question. I think maybe eventually by Wednesday or Thursday, maybe Friday. But let me show you how much rain we've had just in the last 3 days, since last Friday. Take a look at this. Over Melville, 15 miles northeast of Melville, that's right, 4 inches, over 4 inches. 5 miles west of Melville, they've had 3.76 inches. Here in Billings, we picked up a lot too, over 215 right now. And as you'll notice over in Columbus, 3 miles south of Columbus, they've had 2.10, and Big Timber 1.78 inches. And here in Billings just today, we picked up 1.09 inches of rain out of this storm. It just keeps coming down. And you'll notice our forecast map shows the story. It's all rotating around this upper level low pressure cell. And as that sits and spins, it takes moisture and drawing into it. And then eventually it pushes some of that moisture back at Billings, and that's what we're going to see tomorrow. Some more showers coming, wrapping around that low and pushing into the Billings area. So while it's kind of, we see a break in the action, we're not quite through with it yet. Zoe?
Thanks, Bob. In Stillwater County, crews still searching for a man who was seen falling into the Yellowstone River over the weekend. Authorities say 20-year-old Brandon Fitch of Columbus fell from the Yellowstone River Bridge on Saturday morning. According to the sheriff's office, Fitch has not yet been found, and the search has been suspended as high water and continuing rain created dangerous conditions for search crews. The investigation is ongoing, but authorities say no foul play is suspected. And the Montana Chamber of Commerce made its candidate endorsements Monday, but declined to endorse anyone in the state's top race for U.S. Senate. Montana's top business lobby won't endorse in U.S. Senate race. The chamber said no candidate in the U.S. Senate race had the support of at least 2/3 of the group's board of directors. The supermajority of the board is required for an endorsement. And Democratic incumbent Senator Jon Tester is running for a 3rd term. He's being challenged by Republican Matt Rosendale, Libertarian Rick Breckenridge, and Green Party candidate Steve Kelly. Tester's campaign says the chamber recognized that Rosendale is wrong for Montana business. Rosendale's campaign said that Tester has a record of voting against business, such as his opposition to the Republicans' federal tax cut bill last year and his support of Obamacare. The chamber also endorsed Republican Brad Johnson for the Public Service Commission in Western Montana's District 5 and Democrat Doug Carricker in Northern Montana's PSC District 1. In statewide news, it looks like tax revenues are bouncing back, and if they continue on that trend, some of the budget cuts in the past year could be undone starting later this summer. But the final determination is still a few weeks away. MTN's chief political reporter Mike Dennison explains.
When state lawmakers met in special session last November, they approved nearly $80 million in budget cuts, the majority of which hit human service programs. But they also passed a law that said if flagging tax revenues bounce back past a certain level, that funding would be restored in fiscal year 2019, which starts next month. Now, legislative fiscal staff says that threshold could be surpassed by $137 million. If that total holds true by early next month, $46 million of that money will offset cuts over the next 12 months.
Senate Bill 9 and putting in place a mechanism that would force the money to go back to the specific areas from which it was cut is a big impact, and it's something that I think was a good safeguard against some of those cuts becoming permanent.
Senate Bill 9 outlines how the money would be restored to various departments and directed to other accounts. But the final result is not yet certain. Balance and legislative staff say the $137 million figure is the middle of a range of possible outcomes. Governor Steve Bullock's budget director, Dan Villa, also didn't say much Monday about the numbers, except that the picture will become clear soon enough.
We will know in July where we're at, and at that point we will have additional conversations with you about Senate Bill 9 implementation.
That's when fiscal year-end numbers will dictate how much money is restored next year. Balance also acknowledged that some of the cuts may not be able to be reversed, such as layoffs in some programs, office closures, or cutbacks in local mental health services.
There have been changes made structurally within organizations that you can't just simply undo.
Yet, she says revenue recovery should be good news, both for programs that were cut and the long-term outlook for the state budget.
If we stay on the growth trajectory that we are on, I think we look pretty good.
Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
Thank you, Mike. He says the next fiscal year begins July 1st, and the budget numbers will be certified by mid-August. And still coming up on the Q2 10 o'clock news, 22 years ago, the FBI laid siege to the Freeman compound outside Jordan, Montana. And in tonight's Q2 Rewind, we look back at this tense moment in Montana history. Plus, the World Health Organization announced it is classifying excessive gaming as a disorder. We'll have more on that. And later in sports, this Wyoming native hits an inside the park home run tonight for the New York Mets. And that's not all. Scott fills us in.
You're watching MTN News with Jay Cohn and Janelle Slade. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Green. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.